Hello, my dears, and welcome to another Grimm fairy tale bedtime story. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at Tom Thumb. So, settle in, get cozy, and I hope you enjoy. There once was a poor countryman who used to sit in the chimney corner all evening and poke the fire while his wife sat at her spinning wheel, and he used to say, "How dull it is without any children about. Our house is so quiet, and other people's houses are so noisy and merry." "Yes," answered the wife as she sighed, "if only we could have one, and that one ever so little, no bigger than my thumb. How happy I should be. It would indeed be having our heart's desire." Now it happened that after a while the woman had a child, who was perfect in all his limbs, but no bigger than a thumb. The parents said, "He is just about what we wished for, and we will love him very much," and they named him according to his stature, Tom Thumb. And though they gave him plenty of nourishment, he grew no bigger, but remained exactly the same size as when he was first born. And he had very good faculties, and was very quick and prudent, so that all he did prospered. One day his father made ready to go into the forest and cut wood, and he said, as if to himself, "Now I wish there was someone to bring the cart to meet me." "Oh, father," cried Tom Thumb, "I can bring the cart, let alone for that, and in proper time, too." Then the father laughed and said, "How will you manage that? You are much too little to hold the reins." "That has nothing to do with it, father. While my mother goes on with her spinning, I will sit in the horse's ear and tell him where to go." "Well," answered the father, "we will try it once." When it was time to set off, the mother went on spinning, after seeing Tom Thumb in the horse's ear, and so he drove off, crying, "Giddy up, and giddy up." So the horse went on quite as if his master were driving him, and drew the wagon right along the road to the wood. Now it happened just as they were turning the corner that the little fellow was calling out "Giddy up," that two strange men passed by. "Look," said one of them, "how is this? There goes a wagon, and the driver is calling to the horse, and yet he's nowhere to be seen." "It is very strange," said the other. "We will follow the wagon and see where it belongs." And the wagon went right through the wood, up to the place where the wood had been hewn. When Tom Thumb caught sight of his father, he cried out, "Look, father, here I am with the wagon. Now take me down." The father held the horse with his left hand, and with the right he lifted down his little son out of the horse's ear, and Tom Thumb sat down on a stump, quite happy and content. When the two strangers saw him, they were struck dumb with wonder. At last one of them, taking the other aside, said to him, "Look here, the little chap would make our fortune if we were to show him in town for money. Suppose we buy him?" So they went up to the woodcutter and said, "Sell the little man to us. We will take care in making sure no harm shall come to him." "No," answered the father, "he is the apple of my eye, and not for all the money in the world should I sell him." But Tom Thumb, when he heard what was going on, climbed up by his father's coat-tails, and perching himself on his shoulder, he whispered in his ear, "Father, you might as well let me go. I will soon come back again." Then the father gave him up to the two men for a large chunk of money. They asked him where he would like to sit. "Oh, put me on the brim of your hat," said he. "There I can walk about and view the country and be in no danger of falling off." So they did as he wished, and when Tom Thumb had taken leave of his father, they set off all together. And they traveled on until it grew dark, and the little fellow asked to be set down a little while for a change, and after some difficulty they consented. So the man took him down from his hat and set him in a field by the roadside, and he ran away directly, and after creeping about among the furrows, he slipped suddenly into a mouse-hole, just what he was looking for. "Good evening, my masters. You can go home without me," cried he to them, laughing. They ran up and felt about with their sticks in the mouse-hole, but in vain. Tom Thumb crept farther and farther in, and as it was growing dark, they had to make their best of the way home, and full of vexation and with empty purses. When Tom Thumb found that they were gone, he crept out of his hiding place underground. "It is dangerous work groping about these holes in darkness," he said. "I might easily break my neck." But by good fortune he came upon an empty snail shell. "Now that's all right," said he. "Now I can get safely through the night." And he settled himself down in it. Before he had time to get to sleep, however, he heard the two men pass by, one saying to the other, "How can we manage to get a hold of the rich parson's gold and silver?" "I can tell you how," cried Tom Thumb. "What's this?" said one of the thieves, quite frightened. "I hear someone speak." So they stood still and listened, and Tom Thumb spoke again. "Take me with you, and I'll show you how to do it." "Where are you, then?" asked they. "Look about on the ground and notice where the voice comes from," answered he, and at last they found him and lifted him up. "You little elf," said they, "how can you help us?" "Look here," answered he. "I can easily creep through the iron bars of the parson's room and hand out to you whatever you'd like to have." "Very well," said they. "We will try what you can do." So when they came to the parsonage house, Tom Thumb crept into the room and cried out with all his might, "Will you have all that is here?" So the thieves were terrified and said, "Do speak more softly, lest anyone should be awakened." But Tom Thumb made as if he did not hear them, and cried out again, "What would you like? Will you have all that is here?" The cook, who was sleeping in a room near by, heard it and raised herself in bed and listened. The thieves, however, in their fear of being discovered, had run part of the way back, but they took their courage again, thinking it was only a jest of the little fellow. So they came back and whispered to him to be serious and to hand them out something. Then Tom Thumb called out once more as loud as he could, "Oh yes, I will give it all to you, only put out your hands." Then the listening maid heard him distinctly that time, and jumped out of bed and burst open the door. The thieves ran off as if the wild huntsman were behind them, but the maid, as she could see nothing, went to fetch a light. When she came back with one, Tom Thumb had taken himself off, without being seen by her, into the barn, and the maid, when she looked everywhere and found nothing, went back to bed at last. She thought that she must have been dreaming with her eyes and ears open. So Tom Thumb crept among the hay and found a comfortable nook to sleep in, where he intended to remain until it was day and then go back home to his father and mother. But other things were to befall him. Indeed, there is nothing but trouble and worry in this world. The maid got up at the dawn of day to feed the cows. The first place she went was to the barn, where she took up an armful of hay, and it happened to be the very heap in which Tom Thumb lay asleep. And he was so fast asleep that he was aware of nothing, and never waked until he was in the mouth of the cow who had taken him up with the hay. "Oh dear," cried he, "how is it that I have gotten into a mill?" But he soon found out where he was, and he had to be very careful not to get between the cow's teeth, and at last he had to descend into the cow's stomach. "The windows were forgotten when this little room was built," said he, "and the sunshine cannot get in. There's no light to be had." His quarters were in every way unpleasant to him, and, what was worse, new hay was constantly coming in, and the space was being filled up. At last he cried out in his extremity as loud as he could, "No more hay for me! No more hay for me!" The maid was then milking the cow, and as she heard a voice but could see no one around, and as it was the same voice she had heard in the night, she was so frightened that she fell off her stool and spilled the milk. Then she ran in great haste to her master, crying, "Oh, oh, master, the cow spoke." "You must be crazy," answered her master, and he went himself to the cow-house to see what was the matter. No sooner had he put his foot inside the door than Tom Thumb cried out again, "No more hay for me! No more hay for me!" Then the parson himself was frightened, supposing that a bad spirit had entered the cow, and he ordered her to be put to death. So she was killed, but the stomach, where Tom Thumb was lying, was thrown upon a dunghill. Tom Thumb had great trouble to work his way out of it, and he'd made just enough space for his head to get through when a new misfortune happened. A hungry wolf ran up and swallowed the whole stomach in one gulp. But Tom Thumb did not lose courage. "Perhaps," thought he, "the wolf will listen to reason," and he cried out from inside of the wolf, "My dear wolf, I can tell you where to get a splendid meal." "Where is that to be had?" asked the wolf. "In such and such a house, and you must creep into it through the drain, and there you will find cakes and bacon and broth as much as you can eat." And he described to him his father's house. The wolf needed not to be told twice. He squeezed himself through the drain that night, and feasted in the storeroom to his heart's content. When at last he was satisfied, he wanted to go away again, but he had become so big that to creep the same way back was impossible. This Tom Thumb had reckoned upon, and began to make a terrible din inside the wolf, crying and calling out as loud as he could. "Will you be quiet?" said the wolf. "You will wake the folks up." "Look here," cried the little man, "you are very well satisfied, and now I will do something for my own enjoyment," and began to make all the noise that he could. At last the father and mother were awakened, and they ran to the room door and peeped through the chink, and when they saw a wolf in the occupation, they ran and fetched weapons, the man an axe and the wife a scythe. "Stay behind," said the man as they entered the room. "When I have given him a blow and it does not seem to have killed him, then you must cut at him with your scythe." Then Tom Thumb heard his father's voice and cried, "Dear father, I am here inside the wolf." Then the father cried out in full joy, "Thank heavens that we have found our dear child," and told his wife to keep the scythe out of the way lest Tom Thumb should be hurt with it. Then he drew near and struck the wolf with such a blow that he fell down dead, and then he fetched a knife and a pair of scissors and opened up the wolf's body to let out the little fellow. "Oh, what anxiety we have felt about you," said the father. "Yes, father, I have seen a good deal of the world, and I am very glad to breathe fresh air again." "And where have you been all this time?" asked his father. "Oh, I have been in a mouse hole and a snail's shell and a cow's stomach and a wolf's insides. Now I think I will stay at home." "And we will not part with you for all the kingdoms of the world," cried the parents as they kissed and hugged their dear little Tom Thumb, and they gave him something to eat and drink and a new suit of clothes, as his old ones were soiled with travel, and they all lived happily ever after. A cute little story about a mischievous, very little boy, and, well, I hope you all enjoyed. I hope that you get some good rest. Good night.